Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video I have my Game Week 19 team selection. I've got 2 free transfers and lots of places that I could be using them. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button. Make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, this is my final upload for Game Week 19 and also my final upload before Christmas. So I hope you have a wonderful Christmas with your family. And even if you don't celebrate, I hope you have a fantastic day as well. I won't be streaming on Boxing Day because I'm going to spend a bit of time with my family and just sort of switch off from FPL. But I will be back for the regular content in Game Week 20, including, of course, a deadline stream. So, we're going to jump straight into Game Week 19, my team selection. If you want to see how I got on in Game Week 18, it was absolutely horrific, but I did a stream yesterday where I spoke about all of that different stuff, and we went through Game Week 18 in detail. So, I don't want to repeat content, and if you want to see the misery of Game Week 18, you can go and watch yesterday's stream. It's about an hour long. We just want to look forward now to Game Week 19, especially off the back of a massive red arrow. So, jumping into Game Week 19, I do have 2 free transfers, and the team is in a pretty good position, and I think there are some obvious places where I can make transfers. So I'm hoping it will be a relatively straightforward week for me, but news around Erling Haaland might change a lot of our transfer plans and what we want to do moving forward. So I'm currently rated at 94% according to Fantasy Football Hub, predicted to get 60.3 points. By the way, Fantasy Football Hub are still offering the 30-day free trial and 30% off if you use the link in the description. So now is a pretty good time to do it. Starting with the goalkeepers, I've got Dubravka and Areola. The goalkeepers just continue to be so frustrating in FPL, not only for me, but for a lot of people. Pickford, I mean, I'm still not over Pickford, selling him on my Game Week 8 wildcard, him then going on to be the top scoring keeper for the period after I sold him. And a lot of the other keepers still delivering points. And then I've brought in Dubravka, who, yes, got me a clean sheet a couple of weeks ago, but hasn't been performing quite to the level you would hope. But we know how much better Newcastle are at home versus away. I think they've now lost 4 away games in a row. They're playing at home against a Forest side who are largely toothless, of course, under new management now, but I still think this is a decent chance for a clean sheet, and I don't see the need to make a goalkeeper transfer at the moment. Interestingly, Areola did get his place back in the West Ham starting 11 against Manchester United, and he did keep a clean sheet as well. So that looks good moving forward for Areola, that he may well be the first choice goalkeeper for West Ham again. And if that is the case, that could be very, very useful if at some point Dubravka loses his place, or if in January Newcastle do go out and sign another goalkeeper. It's nice that we won't be forced to make that transfer immediately because we have Areola as backup. So I'm not overly happy about the goalkeeper situation, but when I look at potential transfers that I could make, maybe an Emi Martinez, but I've got Pau Torres assuming he's fit, which we'll discuss in a second. Maybe I could go for a Leno or a Raya, but generally I'm pretty happy with the goalkeepers, and at least they are very, very cheap. Moving on to the defence, there's a lot to dislike, but I also don't think I'm too far away from where I want to be for the time being. We'll start with Pedro Porro because he is the defender I'm most happy with. He was actually very, very close to a clean sheet in Game 18, although definitely didn't deserve it. But even before Everton scored, they had 2 or 3 big chances. They also had the goal ruled out by VAR. So Porro, I don't think will get us many clean sheets. I do think he'll get us the odd one, as he did in Game Week 17, but what you own him for is the attacking returns. And once again, in Game Week 18, he did have a couple of chances to get an attacking return. So very, very happy to own him. The fixtures aren't ideal for Spurs coming up, but he's kind of a defender that you're happy putting in every week because clean sheets are very unpredictable at the moment. So even if there aren't clean sheets for that defender, if there's the chance for attacking returns, that's obviously wonderful. So Pedro Porro, I'm very, very happy to have in my team. Kieran Trippier, less happy. I am also slightly worried about a rest here, although I guess he did get a rest recently when he was suspended. So less concerned maybe than I would have been, but he just doesn't look at it, continues to make mistakes, continues to be the weak link in that defence from a defensive perspective. And yes, he still creates chances, which is great from an FPL perspective, but I do just question, especially with Dan Burn now back. Dan Burn seems to be getting that left-back spot. They're not just going to completely remove Livramento from that defence. I wonder if at some point Livramento does get a game at right-back and Kieran Trippier sits it out. Hopefully that's not this week because this is obviously the prime fixture, Nottingham Forest at home. And I'm not going to sell him unless we get a leak before. It is worth noting that Game Week 19, the early fixture is Newcastle. So we may get a leak potentially before the deadline. I'll obviously tweet about that if we do because I'll be very active over on Twitter before the deadline. But let's say that we don't. I think Dubravka and Trippier double up. Whilst they didn't deliver for me in Game Week 18, because this is now at home and they are so much better at home, I am pretty happy with those two. So Trippier, not great, not ideal to own long term. Could be selling him and downgrading him pretty soon. But for now, I'm happy having him, and hopefully he can get back to his ways of like 9 and 12 pointers in Game Week 19. After that, the rest of the defense, I could have some issues. We'll actually start with Taylor, who is third sub. For the time being, Taylor's fine. I've said across the last couple of weeks, I could see myself selling Taylor at some point. And the main reason for that is I think it could be useful to have 5 good defenders every single week that you can choose between, especially with some of the injuries, suspensions, rotation that inevitably happens over this period. So it could be useful to have a 5th defender, and especially if I end up keeping Son or Salah when they go after their respective tournaments, it might be nice to have further depth. But for the time being, I think I have other issues outside of Taylor, so he's unlikely to be sold for me this week, which leaves Simicast and Pau Torres, both of which are injury issues. Pau Torres, I'm hoping, is less of an injury issue, because he has been spotted at Bodymoor Heath, which is the Aston Villa training ground. I don't think he's been in full training yet, but from the quotes going around and the general vibe around the club, it doesn't sound like it's a very serious injury. So even if Pau Torres is confirmed out for Game Week 19, I don't see him as the priority sell in my defence when I have Simicast. So I think the only way I would sell Pau Torres this week is if Emery comes out and we get some news that he's out for like 4 or 5 months and he's a definite long-term injury. There's no chance of him featuring anytime soon, because from what we've seen from the Simicast injury looks pretty bad. And on top of that, I think Robertson's coming back soon anyway. So for me, when I'm prioritising who I need to sell between the two, and by the way, I could end up selling both. That is a possibility, but I don't think I need to. I think I only really need to sell one this week, and for me, that probably needs to be Simicast. And I do have 1.8 million in the bank, and I mean, it's a very, 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 very obvious where I need to move here, because I haven't owned an Arsenal defender for a while now, and every time Arsenal keep a clean sheet, and I think that will be very common, especially with the fixtures coming up, it really, really hurts my rank. And I think they are, I've been saying it for a while now, comfortably the best defence in the league, especially at home, but also they're very good away from home. Like any fixture, you feel like Arsenal could keep a clean sheet. So for me, Simicast to either Gabriel or Saliba, which one of those two? I would love to know if you've got an opinion down below. Gabriel traditionally has greater goal threat, but Saliba's slightly better for bonus points and is also slightly more nailed. I don't know between Saliba and Gabriel who I want to move for, but I'll probably bring in one of those two. It will make the defence strong for this week, and then in most weeks, it will be Porro, Trippier, and then the Arsenal defender. However, if I end up downgrading Trippier, maybe that Pau Torres comes into the 11, and I think I have a nice rotation between those 4 defenders. So that's the defensive situation. Happy with the goalkeepers. Happy with most of them largely. Really fingers crossed that Pau Torres, which I don't know at the time of me recording, fingers crossed that Pau Torres is going to be available for 19, or at least for Game Week 20 against Burnley. Simicast to an Arsenal defender feels fairly straightforward. So let's move on to the midfield. So I'm recording this before the Chelsea-Wolves game on Sunday. I'm recording this on Sunday late morning to get it out just after that game. And obviously I'm going to go back and spend some time with my family now. So I couldn't wait until the Chelsea-Wolves game was played. So at the time of me recording, I don't know how Palmer gets on. Fingers crossed he does well, because I kind of need him to. I also don't know if he's going to pick up his 5th yellow card or not. If he picks up his 5th yellow card, it's absolutely fine, because I have Martinelli on the bench. So simply, the team would be very, very similar in the attack. I would probably just bench Palmer and bring Martinelli into the starting 11. I could then sell Martinelli for someone I want slightly more. Maybe a Richarlison, maybe a Jared Bowen. I have that option to do so because I have the 2 free transfers. But I wouldn't be selling Palmer regardless. I would simply just move him to the bench. And to be honest, it would just give me less of a benching headache. So yeah, again, at the time of recording, I don't know that. If he is available, he will be starting for me, because all of the stuff that we know about Palmer is true. He's on penalties as far as we know, although it will be interesting again. If today Chelsea get a penalty whilst Nkunku is on the pitch, I would love to see, is Palmer on penalties or is it actually Nkunku? Because Nkunku dispatched his penalty very, very well against Newcastle. And we know he's got a very good penalty record. So I guess we'll assess all of that going into Game Week 19 and beyond. But Palmer I love as an option, still fantastic. If he doesn't pick up his 5th yellow, I would still be tempted to bring him in yourself. Crystal Palace at home feels like an okay fixture. Whilst Palace are okay defensively, they still have injuries. And of course, it is at home. Palace are much better at Selhurst Park than they are away. So I like this fixture for Palmer, and I won't be removing it. It'll just be whether I end up starting him or not. And then I've got the trio that a lot of people have, which is Saka, Son, Salah. All 3 on penalties, all 3 traditionally great FPL assets. All 3 have been returning this season. I suppose the one that most people are concerned about is Saka, because he's not really hauled at any point this season. He's not given us that big performance where you go, that's why you own Bukayo Saka. But he's also delivered very consistently, and he's still one of the top point scoring midfielders. Does he justify the price tag? He's not really justifying the price tag at the moment. And the other issue I spoke about in Game Week 18 with Saka is you can't captain him. And you may say, yeah, you can, but when a player is just never delivering a big score and they are showing absolutely zero possibility of hauling, I don't feel comfortable giving that person the armband. And so for that reason, you're now paying, what is it, like 9 mil for Saka now, for a player that you can't captain and is delivering the odd assist here and there and ticking along. I still have faith in Saka because he's shown now over a very long period of time that he does return on a consistent basis. And once you just say, do you know what, I can't captain him, and once you accept that and then look at his points, they are still very, very consistent. But I suppose my concern mainly, and I say this with Saka and Martinelli, is that the Arsenal attack in general just aren't really clicking at the moment. Both from a data, eye test perspective, even with Gabby Jesus back now, we thought once Jesus were back, Saka and Martinelli would play a lot more narrow and they'd start to create loads of chances and they'd get loads of chances themselves and their XG would shoot up. But we're not really seeing that. Their goal threat is still very, very minimal. They are still creating, but they're both very, very wide. Martinelli and Saka are stuck to the wings, and that's not great from an FPL perspective, and we're seeing that in their goal threat data. Both Saka and Martinelli in the last 2 or 3 weeks have had pretty high expected assists, but their expected goals still very, very low. So I am concerned about the Arsenal attack in general. I definitely don't really want a double up on the Arsenal attack, and people have been speaking about the likes of Ødegaard and Gabriel Jesus, and I'm just not overly interested at the moment based on the way that we're seeing them play. West Ham at home will be an interesting fixture though, because Arsenal are much better at home. West Ham have, apart from against Manchester United, really not defended very well across this season. So this is a game we need and want to see Arsenal put West Ham to the sword. 2, 3, 4 goals. 2 goals minimum, by the way. 3 or 4 would be ideal. And we want to see them creating a lot of chances. So let's see how they get on. If Saka and Martinelli and Ødegaard and all of these Arsenal attackers look pretty poor again, maybe Arsenal come away with what we probably expect, which is like a 1 or 2-0 win, then maybe it is just worth jumping off the Arsenal attack. Because if you remove Saka for a cheaper option, you can get Trippier and Trent and Salah and Son and Haaland. The only reason we can't get all of these plus the expensive defenders is because we've got a £9 million Bukayo Saka in there. So let's see what happens. I'm not really close to selling him at the moment, especially with Son and Salah going off to their tournaments in Gameweek 21. But yeah, it's not ideal when you're paying that much for an asset that isn't delivering on a consistent basis. Heung-min Son is pretty consistent. He obviously returned again in Game Week 18, and I still think Son's great. You've now missed the boat to bring him in if you don't own him, simply because he's then off in Game Week 21. So whilst he's got Brighton away and Bournemouth at home in the next 2, which are good fixtures, and you could even argue he's a decent captaincy shout this week, I think you've missed the boat. And if you are looking to bring in a Spurs attacker, it is still Richarlison. I think Richarlison came off early with a slight knock though, so let's wait and see, make sure he's fit. But assuming that he is, Richarlison is probably the one that I would go for. Even a Brennan Johnson. I don't really love Kulusevski because I don't think he has enough goal threat, but I think both of those two could be really good options in the absence of Heung-min Son. But for now, I'll be keeping Son in my team. And then Salah, in a similar way to Son, will be in my team until he goes off. I do think I will end up keeping one of Son and Salah during AFCON and the Asian Cup. And the reason for that is I have a lot of money tied up in both. And you'll hear people say that. And what we mean is we bought Son and Salah at very cheap prices, and they have now gone up quite a bit. But remember, when you are accruing team value, you don't gain all of the money of when a player goes up. So let's say you buy Salah at 12.5 million and he goes up to 13.5, hypothetically. You don't gain all 1 million of that. You only gain 0.5. You only gain 0.1 for every 0.2 a player goes up. So if I bought Salah at 12.5 and he's now 13.5 in this hypothetical situation, I can only sell him for 13. If I then wanted to buy him back, I would have to buy him back at the full 13.5. So in that scenario, I would lose 0.5 million on Salah. And that goes for both Salah and Son. I have money tied up in both. So if I sell both Salah and Son and then buy him back 3 weeks later, I'm looking at probably losing about 0.6 or 0.7 million in team value. So I will ideally hold on to one of them, sell the other one, and then buy the other one back, obviously, when they've finished their tournament. It makes a lot more sense just value-wise and team-wise to sell Salah because he's so much more expensive, to keep Son and then use the Salah money. But you do need to think about what is your route back to Salah. I certainly wouldn't be selling Salah and spreading the funds around because you'll want him back very soon. But for Game Week 19, that's not really a discussion to be had. Son and Salah absolutely fine, along with Saka and Palmer in my midfield 4. Martinelli on the bench. I've been so disappointed with Martinelli. I really thought it was a good transfer at the time, and I kept him again in Game Week 18 in the hope that he'd deliver. All of the alternatives that I could have sold him for, such as Bowen and Richarlison and even Kudus, all returning. So I'm really, really disappointed. It was probably a poor decision to hold on to him because the data's still not supporting that he's great. But he was just showing trends of moving in the right direction. But for this week, I think he's the obvious player to bench for me, especially when you look at my 3 forwards. So Martelly stays. I'm not sure how long for, but I don't think he's a priority transfer out this week, especially when I can get away with just benching him. So that's the midfield. Let's move on to the 3 forwards. So moving on to the 3 forwards, you can probably see why I had such a stinky game week 18. I don't own Solanke. And do I think it's too late to bring in Solanke? Probably not. I mean, the data is excellent. He's still on penalties. Bournemouth is still attacking fairly well. But the fixtures do turn. Game week 19 against Fulham at home is the final good fixture for Bournemouth. And then they do really turn. And I'll discuss in a second my other reason for not moving for Solanke. It's around Haaland and me probably wanting to use the spot that I would have brought Solanke in for Haaland. But we'll discuss all of that in a second. Let's actually just look at my 3 forwards. So I have Alvarez. At the time of me recording, I don't yet know whether Haaland will be back and available for Game Week 19, but how good Alvarez is as an option will, 1, depend on when Haaland's back, and 2, depend on when KDB is back. Once Haaland is back and Alvarez drops back into midfield, I don't think he's a great option. He's shown across the last 7-8 weeks. Yes, the fixtures have been difficult, but he's just not going to get you that many points from that midfield spot because he's just not getting a massive amount of big chances. Yes, he creates quite a bit, but he's only going to tick along with the odd assist here and there if he's just creating. So Alvarez isn't an ideal hold unless Haaland is out. And if Haaland is out, he just becomes a completely different asset. And I'm not saying he's going to score the amount of points that Haaland would, but he's probably on penalties, he's on most set pieces, and he's playing as the number 9. So I think Alvarez without Haaland is great. With Haaland back, he's less of a great option. So that will massively affect how long I want to hold him and whether I am happy starting him moving forward. The other thing is, like I said, around KDB, because even if Haaland's back and Alvarez drops into midfield, I may still keep Alvarez because he's got okay fixtures and I don't love many of the forwards. But if KDB then comes back, I'm not even sure that Alvarez starts a lot of games because, yes, they could play Alvarez and KDB together, but then you've also got Foden, who at the moment seems to be preferred in a midfield slot. So you can't fit all of these players in, and I think Alvarez might start to get a few rests. So let's see what happens. Let's see what news we get before Game Week 19 and before Game Week 20. For the time being, I'm happy having Alvarez. I don't think it's a great fixture against Everton away. And maybe if Haaland's confirmed as back, maybe it leans me towards benching him and playing Martinelli, who I think has a much better fixture against West Ham at home. But for the time being, I'm going to go on the basis that we aren't sure, and I'll probably end up just starting and keeping Alvarez. I've then got Ollie Watkins, who's got Manchester United away. I know a lot of people have a real benching headache this week and are maybe considering benching Watkins, and it makes sense, I guess, because Aston Villa aren't fantastic away, and Ollie Watkins is one of only a few players in our attack that isn't on penalties, and he's been quite disappointing recently, but I think he was very close to returning in that game against Sheffield United, probably unlucky not to, and Manchester United are just not very good at the moment, and I think that Aston Villa could comfortably put 3, 4, 5 goals past us, and that isn't pessimism. I think that is genuinely just saying Aston Villa are a better team at the moment, and I think they could comfortably dominate that game at Old Trafford. So I'm not going to be benching Watkins myself, but I do understand it becomes quite tricky if you've got a benching headache. And I just think long-term, Watkins is such a great hold in my team that I would be very surprised if anytime soon I end up selling Ollie Watkins. So Alvarez and Watkins are fine. I'll finish with the 11th player in the team, which is Darwin. So in Game Week 18, I had the option of going from Darwin to Solanke or Nkunku or Wilson, just selling Darwin. And on paper, I probably should have because he came on for a 1-pointer. And obviously, Solanke came away with a 17-pointer. So that was a 16-point swing. And you could say just get rid of him. I don't think I can now get rid of him this week. I think he didn't play. He didn't start, I should say, against Arsenal. Lots and lots and lots of people, the pundits, FPL community, just football, Twitter, everyone saw Liverpool miss Darwin. And whilst he misses pretty much every chance he gets, at least he's a threat. Gakpo and Diaz were just non-existent in that game. Diaz has been struggling ever since he came back from injury, which is very sad to see because he was so good pre-injury. And Gakpo just isn't a threat. I know he does score occasionally, but I just don't think he challenges the defence that he plays against. So I think the fact that they looked really poor from an attacking perspective for me, Liverpool, they looked great in the build-up, but Gakpo and Diaz weren't doing it. And the fact that he was benched in Game Week 18, I think it looks set for a start for Darwin in Game Week 19. Does that mean he'll haul? Absolutely not. But Burnley away is a good fixture, and I think I've got to keep him as a result. The other reason that I didn't do Darwin to Solanke in Game Week 18, other than just being in some sort of toxic relationship with Darwin, is also because I'm pretty sure that that is the spot in my team which will become Haaland. And I thought there's a good chance that I want Haaland for Game Week 20 if he's fit. Does it make sense to do Darwin to Solanke for 1 or 2 weeks to then move that spot to Haaland anyway? Probably not. So I thought, do you know what? I'll just hold on to Darwin for a couple more weeks. And then that Darwin position is almost definitely around Game Week 20 or 21 going to become Haaland anyway. So that was the other reason. But I don't need to justify my decisions. It didn't end up working out very well. I should have just moved for Solanke. And if you did have Solanke, massive congratulations, because you're probably sat on a green arrow and you're looking at me and thinking, I'd much rather have Solanke against Fulham at home than Darwin against Burnley away, which is fair enough. But this is the position that I'm in. So this is the starting 11. I have 2 free transfers, but I don't necessarily feel like I have to use those 2 free transfers. The reason for that is, yes, Game Week 19, I could improve my team with 2 free transfers. Absolutely. I could remove Darwin. I could remove Martinelli. I could make 2 defensive transfers and maybe bring in like 1 Arsenal defender and then another cheeky punt in defence. But I think I could also really benefit from rolling once again one of those free transfers, simply because if Haaland is back for Game Week 20 against Sheffield United, I'm almost certain I'm going to want to get him back in. And for me, that's going to require 2 free transfers. For a lot of people who've left money in the bank, you can do it in one move, go straight back from a Solanke or a Darwin or an Alvarez to Haaland, and that makes it fairly straightforward. But for me, 2 free transfers will be required. Now, I really don't want to take a hit to bring Haaland back in, especially when it involves removing one of Son or Salah. I feel like taking a hit to remove one of those to bring in Haaland maybe will pay off, but is a bit of a risk. So I'd rather be able to do that for free. And I don't think I need 2 free transfers with my team this week. At least at the time of me recording, it doesn't look that way. So just to recap, the plan at the moment is probably Simicast to an Arsenal defender. Hope that Pau Torres, if he's not available for 19, looks possible that he'll be available for 20. Even so, if he's not, I don't think I'll end up selling him, simply because I do want an Aston Villa defender longer term. And I don't think there are many other defenders that I desperately want outside of maybe double Arsenal defence, but I own Saka and Martinelli, so I can't do that without removing Martinelli first. So probably Simicast to an Arsenal defender and roll the second free transfer. Even if Palmer does get suspended today against Wolves, or he picks up a yellow card, he picks up his 5th yellow, I'd probably still just bench Palmer and play Martinelli. So that's the starting 11. Let's take a quick look at my watch list and see if there are any other players that I'm interested in. So very briefly, here is my Game Week 19 watch list, the players that I am currently considering bringing in, or at least the players that I want to own. And like I said, a defensive transfer is most likely. And for me, it has to be Gabriel or Saliba. And I'm still very unsure which one to bring in. So again, let me know down below if you have a real preference on either. And let me know why as well. If Gabriel is as nailed as Saliba, it makes a lot more sense to go for him because it saves a lot. And it leaves open the option of keeping Salah through AFCON and actually selling Son. Whereas if I go for Saliba, I think I have to sell Salah. And also just moving forward, it gives me like 0.6 million more to play with. So I think I prefer Gabriel at the moment for that reason. But Saliba is the better defender to own for me if they were equal in price, simply because he's just more nailed. The only other defender that I'm sort of half considering is Konsa, but I don't think this is the best week to do so. And I also think having Pau Torres is probably enough, especially considering we've now missed the best fixture of the bunch, which was Sheffield United at home, in which they didn't even keep a clean sheet. We've now missed that, and I just think that probably an Arsenal defender is the better place to go right now. So for me, if I am to bring in a defender, it's going to be an Arsenal one. Midfield-wise, there aren't that many that I'm really considering at the moment. Bowen and Richarlison continue to be my favoured 2 options, and they are probably the 2 options that I would move for if I sell Son and or Salah when they go after their tournaments. Bowen in particular just continues to return, and he looks really good for West Ham. And I think his link up with Kudus has been excellent. Of course, when Kudus goes, you do lose that connection between the 2 of them. And I think they've been playing very well together. But that also means that Bowen has to be the one that gets the goals for West Ham. So Bowen and Richarlison likely to be the 2 players that I look at bringing into the midfield. I've put Ødegaard down here. But as I said, until Arsenal start to click more in the attack, I know I've got Martinelli and Saka at the moment, but I don't love that. And I probably won't move for an Arsenal attacker for the time being. So in the midfield, not many options, to be honest, that I'm overly convinced by. And then in the forward position, same again. Solanke is fantastic, but the fixtures are starting to run out soon. Nkunku, if he gets minutes today and looks good, then maybe I'm tempted to bring him in. But I still don't think he gets a consistent run of starts yet. I still think he's going to be eased back in a little bit more slowly. And then you've also got, obviously, Erling Haaland. And for me, that is where I'm looking at using my forward transfer. Until Haaland's back, I don't think I'll be removing any of my 3 forwards. But once he is, Darwin to Haaland feels fairly obvious. Unless KDB's also back, then it may be that I decide to do Alvarez to Haaland and somehow still hang on to Darwin. So those are the transfers at the moment. Like I said, the only position that I feel massively upgrades my team, apart from bringing Haaland in, is probably an Arsenal defender. I did just want to very briefly show you also the Fantasy Football Hub recommended AI transfers. Again, they are still offering their 30% free day, 30-day free trial and 30% off if you use the link down below in the description. It's now a Christmas deal rather than a Black Friday deal, but they are still running that. And what they are recommended for my AI transfers is they're actually recommending maybe a double transfer, which is Simicast to Zinchenko. And I've not even mentioned Zinchenko. The main reason for that is I just think he's slightly less nailed, but he does carry more attacking threat. And for the time being, whilst Tomiyasu and Timber, etc. are out, he does feel relatively nailed in that Arsenal defence. So they recommend Simicast to Zinchenko and then Martinelli to Bowen. The only issue with Martinelli to Bowen is it creates an even bigger benching headache for me unless Palmer is suspended. So that could well be the sort of double move that I make, potentially. But I just think I feel a little bit safe with Gabriel and Saliba. And I'm not sure I need to make that Martinelli move this week. But I do really, really like it as an option. And again, if you do want to get that, there is a link down below in the description. So let me know what you think of my team. I'll just run it back there right now. Let me know what you think of my team. Let me know what transfers you would make. Would you just make the one? Would you maybe make two? And also let me know down below, if Haaland's fit for 90, which I don't know at the time of recording, do you have a plan to get back to him in 19, or are you also going to wait until Game Week 20? So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 19 team selection. Hopefully you did enjoy it. And if you did enjoy today's video, please smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. And if you are seeing this just before Christmas, or maybe even on Christmas Day, I hope you have a wonderful Christmas with your family if you're celebrating. And if not, I hope you have a fantastic Monday either way. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, bye-bye.